welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Trish. I am an ambulatory wheelchair user, and I use this channel to share what my day-to-day life is like. I am in Northeast Ohio, and it is freezing. So I am not leaving the house unless I absolutely have to until it's no longer like Antarctica out there. Having an autoimmune disorder and arthritis, the cold's not good for me. So I thought I would take this opportunity to do something I don't think I've ever done before on this channel. I want to share my entire chronic illness journey with you. From the very start, when symptoms started to get really troublesome, until now when I finally have some answers. Now, it has been a very long journey. I first got sick in 2009. So I can't do that all in one video. I feel like it would be too long. I am going to break it down into 2 to 3 parts. I have never done this on video before. I have never gotten into the details. So I hope I can do it without getting too emotional. I'm going to try my best. I am also really fuzzy on the timeline for some of these things. So I'm going to try my best with that. All right, grab a cozy blanket and something to drink and let's get started. I have always been a bit of a medical mystery. I had some miscellaneous health problems as a child. I always got hurt really easy. I got sick really easy. I had conditions like asthma. I had something wrong with my growth plates. I went to various specialists who were never really sure what was going on. But I still had a normal life. I played sports in high school. I didn't play them well, but I did play them. I was fairly active. I never had that many big issues growing up. I didn't have anything that I'd be considered disabled when I was younger. It all changed in the fall of 2009. I was married less than a year, and my husband was an over-the-road truck driver at the time. So I was so excited to get to go with him in his truck. We didn't see each other much at that point. He had an extended training period. And then he was finally allowed to have a passenger in, I believe it was October. So I went with him and we didn't get very far into the trip before I started to get sick. I got a fever. I had a cough. I was just miserable. So at that point, I just started sleeping in the cab. And I didn't really get to see much of where we were going. We picked up some over-the-counter meds, and I had hoped it would get better, but it didn't. So thankfully, he ended up getting routed near home, and somebody picked me up and took me to the emergency room. Now, at the same time, my brother had just been diagnosed with H1N1 flu, which was the pandemic that was going around at that time. It was very new. So that is what we assumed I had. In the ER, they didn't do much. They just swabbed me and labeled me as a presumed case of H1N1, said it would go away soon. They gave me some cough medicine, all that good stuff. I went home. I was really sick, so I stayed with my mom, but it didn't get better. I kept coughing. I could barely eat because I couldn't stop coughing, so I kept going back to the doctors, and eventually they admitted me into the hospital again. I don't remember when that stay was, but that is when they started steroid treatment and they gave me IV fluids. But I got discharged without any real answers on the cough. And by then my joints had also started to swell up. Over the next few months, the joint pain, the swelling, the weakness, the cough, it all got worse. And although I had been hospitalized a few times as a kid, I had never been this sick in my life. And I really did not deal well with it. I just wanted answers. I started to see a rheumatologist who was sure I had seronegative lupus. So he started treatment for that. And he was a really nice doctor. I'm going to talk a lot about misdiagnosis in this video, but I do want to say that the doctor didn't do anything wrong. He continued to treat me for several years. At one point, he acted as my primary doctor. He was wonderful. He was caring. This is a tale full of kind of twists and turns and a lot of what I'd call medical neglect. I continued to go in and out of the hospital. Every time they tried to wean me off the prednisone, I would blow up like a giant balloon to the point where I didn't have like eyes, a nose, a mouth. I was just a blob of swollenness. And then they'd admit me to the hospital again, give me IV steroids steroids and try to fix it, and then they'd send me home and say, wean off the prednisone, but that wasn't happening. I eventually ended up at a large teaching hospital, and they found that my lungs were actually inflamed, and they did testing to see if they could tell why, but they couldn't. They had me on oxygen, which helped with the coughing, and I stayed several weeks while they tried to figure out what was going on, but they also thought it was lupus. So they started me on more medication. Cellcept was one of them, and another similar class of drug. Again, I got sent home with hopes that it would be getting better soon. But it kept getting worse. I was getting weaker. I really did wonder if that was the end, like if I was going to make it through that. My memories from this time period are not great. I don't remember much of it. I'm trying to retell it the best I can remember and what I've heard from family members who were there to support me. There are just months of my life that I was too sick to participate in. It's really, thinking back, scary. And I was scared at the time, but I don't think I realized how many times I was close to dying. And looking back on it, I'm just so thankful that it's no longer like that. And I think I'm also thankful I don't remember all of it. My mom was able to take off work to stay with me in the hospital because we were quite far from home. And I am forever thankful for that. I don't know that I would have got through it without her. She was my advocate. She was my best friend through it all. And she gave up time that she'd been saving for years for me. And that is just such a blessing. I know not everyone has a support system that strong, and I feel lucky for that. The hospital trips continued, and that is when I became a wheelchair user. I started with a transport chair that we bought from, I think, like Rite Aid. At some point, my doctor did write me a prescription to get an actual, like, hospital-style manual chair. And then someone gave me an older hover-round power chair, and that was awesome, although a little hard to haul. Things did start to steady out in fall of 2010. I was still having the hospital trips and I was still using the wheelchair, but they had stopped getting worse, which I was taking as a win. So we went on a cruise, my husband and I. I was a little scared leaving the country, but we got the travel insurance and off we went. And we had a good time. So this next part is going to get a little gross. Fast forward like 2 minutes if you're squeamish. I go for full honesty on this channel, so I'm going to lay it all out. When we got home from the cruise, I started vomiting, and I started vomiting a lot. I could not keep anything down. I tried to stick it out at home, but eventually my heart was impacted. So back to the hospital I went. I had a severe potassium deficiency from all the vomiting. And at this point, it was around Christmas. I had a fairly long hospital stay. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. They tried to do a gastric emptying study several times, but I couldn't keep anything down. Now, if you don't know what a gastric emptying study is, you eat radioactive food, usually eggs and toast. I've done it with bananas. You can't touch it, but they expect you to eat it, which is like the grossest thing to me. They don't find it funny when I say you shouldn't have to eat things you can't touch, but I strongly feel that way. But I could not get a successful one because you have to go hours without vomiting, and I couldn't do that. The doctors did strongly believe that I had a gastric motility issue, but at that point, they discharged me with no answers, no way to keep food down. See a specialist, is what they said, that they couldn't handle it. And that was a local hospital. That was not the teaching hospital that I had gone to for the breathing. But the specialist couldn't see me for several months. So at that point, I started staying with a family member, my grandma, because I was too weak to live on my own. And my husband was still an over-the-road truck driver. And to be in your early 20s and just to depend on other people is terrible. In, I believe, like March of 2011, I did finally get to the specialist. He saw me in clinic at the teaching hospital that I had gone to before, and he directly admitted me into the hospital. Spent most of my 20s in the hospital, so I couldn't tell you. but I think it was one of my longest stays. It might have been my second longest stay. The doctors half the time were arguing with me that they didn't think it could be possible to throw up everything. They were very dismissive in the beginning. Finally, a dietitian got in there and advocated for me to get a feeding tube. And I ended up getting what they call a GJ feeding tube. So it was in my stomach, and it has like a little coil that goes down into your jejunum. I had hoped that that would be the end of it. I could get some nutrition. I'd start feeling stronger. That is not how it went, though. Those tubes are unfortunately kind of unreliable. The little extender tube gets back into the stomach, and my stomach doesn't work. So during that hospital stay, they did confirm that I had gastroparesis. It officially got in my chart, and the feeding tube should have fixed it, but that form of feeding tube didn't. So I had it fixed a few times, and then I went back to the specialist that had admitted me into the hospital and told him, hey, it's been several weeks. I have not been able to run my tube feeds because it's in the wrong place again. And he said, that's okay. He had no concern. He said, maybe you'll be in a bikini soon. Like, I don't even know. I think I cried. I want to cry now just thinking about how harsh it was. I mean, I remember him saying that. You'll be in a bikini soon. Like, that is what we should be worried about. But he was supposed to be like one of the best specialists around. So I just didn't have a source of nutrition. Over the next few months, I had some other miscellaneous health problems. They accidentally found a brain tumor. So I started seeing a doctor for that. And I had this like immense pain that they couldn't identify. I think it ended up being from the gastroparesis. But I got a neurostimulator put in to try to help with it. And at one of the follow-up appointments for that, and I can't remember if it was the appointment follow-up for the trial or for the actual device, but I was in the parking lot of the teaching hospital, and I actually passed out getting from where we parked the wheelchair that we had been using to the car. So instead of calling for help there, my mom actually got me in the car and drove me to the emergency room of another major hospital. And we were hoping that somebody there would help. I know that's kind of a cliffhanger, but that's where I'm leaving the video. I don't want it to be too long or too much in one video. I am sharing this story because I want others to know if they're struggling for a diagnosis or even struggling just to be treated like a human by doctors, they're not alone. This is something that happens every day. When you have rare diseases, it's not easy to get proper treatment. You often get treated like you're faking it, like it's a mental health issue, so many different things. You get more criticism than you get help. And my story's not unique. Lots of people go through this, so I want to be vocal about it. I don't see the point of having a platform if I can't use it to help others, so I want to share the story just to get it out there in the world. Before I got sick, I never knew just how hard people had to fight to get life-saving treatment. I thought it was like the TV shows. You go in and they keep looking until they find what's wrong, but that really isn't the case. If you are new here and want to hear the rest of my story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I do this almost every day, so I will see you soon.